Okay. Got it. Thank you for catching that, Sister Beth. I know it's important for those who are unable to be with us today. There's something very special about starting with Guadalupe. What a gift that the church gives us, that we have both her feast and this special third Sunday of Advent. What a gift. So here we are, wherever we are today. And so I think you can see on the screen, it's also the first page of your handout. And for those of you who don't have the handout, I'll try to make that a little larger. You can see it, yes? There's a tree with 14 figures. And we're just wondering, how are you arriving today? How do you come to this 128? How did we get there? 128 today at this moment on a Sunday. So Veronica, what do you want us to do?
Okay, so we're gonna look at this tree, right? Sort of show us the how your week was, how do you feel today? You're in this session today because we're working together. Why? I am thinking about which is you and why. Can you see it? Because you probably have that in your handout, right?
Page one.
Let's have a little bit of a thought here about which figure best describes how you're coming to this session today. And maybe at this time we can talk to each other about why and how you're coming to the session today, have a little dialogue, and we can just spend time together, 5 minutes. Is that what we want to do today?
Yes, we could go to our small
Okay.
groups. And so in your small group, whoever you show up with, just simply say which figure you found yourself to be and why. And then just go on to the next person. That 5 minutes is going to just run right from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sister.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to open the rooms.
Good.
I know which one I am.
Mm-hmm.
Charlene is not going.
Can these persons be together?
Yeah, oh, there goes. Okay, I don't know why her screen won't. Oh, probably because she had walked away. Okay, Charlene, you might need to click a button so that you can join your group with Sister Georgiana. Can you find the way to get into your breakout room, Charlene? Well, your button is muted, so I can't hear you.
She wrote it on the chat. Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
yes, I'm getting it. That's unusual.
Occasionally this happens and I don't understand why.
Yeah. So can Charlene hear us? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So I would suggest we not talk.
I'm gonna sneak out and get Georgiana and bring her back out of her room.
Veronica. We're going to have to be pretty. I might go faster.
Charlene, do you have the handout? Do you have the handout that Elyse Marie and I sent?
Yes, I do, sister.
While
Yes.
we're waiting, do you want to share with us which one of those on the tree you think you are?
Okay, yes.
Thanks, Joan.
You're welcome. While you're looking, I'll tell you which one I am. I'm number 4, hanging on, because I'm trying to write 475 associate Christmas cards. So that's kind of where I am today.
You are now in the main session.
You're
Oh,
here
sure.
with us, Georgiana.
Okay, I see Charlene.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, and Sister Joan was just sharing that she feels like number 4. That's how she's coming today.
Okay, I got the picture in front of me.
Charlene, how about yourself? You can unmute now.
I was thinking the same myself, if you can hear me. I'm right in the microphone. I know.
Okay,
everybody
that's all
can-
right.
We
Go
can
ahead.
hear you.
Yes, and I would say the same. I'm just trying to hang in there as well. Just trying to keep peace and serenity.
Well, thank you for hanging in. Don't let
Right.
go, either one of you.
Right.
Maybe we can give you a boost up to a branch before it's over today. How about you, Sister Georgiana? How do you come today?
Well, you see number 14, that woman down there wondering, that was myself last night. I had no idea how I was going to get on computer. And it was late and I called Denise to see if I could use hers and nothing. She didn't answer. So I thought, you got to go to bed and let it go. And so I came wondering, and my first thought was this morning, see Denise and then Joan and let them know what's going on. So I saw Denise and I caught her before she was going out to her convent for the day. I asked her if she was going to use her computer and could I use it? And she said, no, she wasn't. And she said, yes, you can. and see number 1 up there, that's the way I felt at the end. But I thought, there's nothing I can do about it tonight. I gotta let it go. And how do I hear that? Then Father said in his little homily, if you're anxious about anything, I forget what he said. And I thought, yes, I'm anxious about this, God. It's at Mass, but I gotta let it go. So I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what was going to work out. So I figured the Spirit was there in it all. So thank you, God.
Uh-huh. How's our time, Sister Beth?
We're past 5 minutes. Are you ready for me to call
We're
everybody
ready.
back?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Sister
Oh.
Georgiana.
Oh, it looks like
That was a
I
great
did
story.
check the thing. We're gonna have 2 minutes to wait before the room's closed.
Okay, that's all right. Then let's see, Sister Beth, how are you coming today, or where are you right this minute?
I didn't even look at the tree, but you know, I'm so distracted by trying to keep you all on going. That's how I am. If there's
You're
something like
probably
that.
the bird.
So
Fine.
you're going,
But that's okay because that's why I'm here today. I'm here to help everybody else.
That's
So it doesn't-
right.
it's
And you do
just
a
fine.
fine job. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
looks
you.
like
Thank you
people are
very
coming
much.
back here.
Thank you. Oh, it's
Yeah.
always such a good feeling when people come back. You know, they didn't kind of. So welcome back, everyone.
Like we're still missing a couple.
Mhm. So I don't know, I feel like I get all over that tree whenever I look at it, and I have to calm myself down and decide which one am I today. I think I'm number 5. Climbing. I love that Kavanaugh reading we had for prayer about our whole life is Advent, not to miss that, you know. So I don't know, that guy climbing up right there in the middle of, has a good hold on those branches. I think that's because I just finished my retreat.
Yeah.
Mhm. And that's such a privilege in our lives as consecrated women here in the Dominican Sisters, that, I mean, we have the responsibility, it is a command that we make an annual retreat. And here it is December, and I'm just getting mine in. So yeah, that's where I am on the tree. How about you, Veronica?
Hello.
You know, I think I've learned with the last couple of years that I'm all over the tree as well. I started with, look at me on the floor 11. I mean, that's how my day started. I couldn't shake this congestion and the heat in the house. And I was like, you know, when you're so congested in the morning, you're almost like confused. And then little by little, I arrived to 4, hanging in there. And then we met, sister, and you got me to 5. So, you know, getting up there.
What good news, what we can do for each other. Welcome, everyone. And the reality is that we are either somewhere on that tree, or like Sister Beth hovering over us, that bird, or right, and maybe by the end of our time together. But what's really important is that we remember that we come as we are, and we're not expected to come in any other way ever by our God. So let's take a breath, pause. Here you are in your associate journey, formation. Where have you been? Well, just recently, you were listening and learning and being insightful and creative with how that story of how our congregation got started. I don't think all the way back to 800 years of dominance, how we got started in Kentucky, and the fact that those sisters left that Kentucky because they knew they needed to respond to the needs in the frontier. And when they did, and they're faced with another choice about making the choice, go back or not go back, they saw what was necessary to engage and support and encourage the human dignity of every person, even those on the margins who were not allowed to be in the schools. Yes, you remember that part?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's where we are today. Veronica, so what is the difference we're looking at today?
Okay, a difference that makes no difference is not difference at all. That's what we're looking at today.
And for those of you who have your handouts, let's look at page 2.
Mhm.
And we may not have the time at this moment to take the time to fill it in, but just know that as we hear in the prophet Jeremiah, God reminds us, I know well the plans I have in mind for you. Plans for welfare, not for woe. Plans for a future full of hope. So there are 2 thought clouds there. As you think about becoming an associate at this very moment, at this moment in your journey, what are some of your feelings? And you can jot those in the cloud, but we're not going to have much time for that right now. But maybe it's something you'll want to go back to. At this time in your journey, Sister Joan is going to take about a few minutes right at the end, and she wants to speak to you about this time in your journey. And then another thought cloud. Why are you doing this? In fact, we'll give you some time. Why? What's your why at this moment for becoming an associate?
Mhm.
As a Dominican associate, we're going to be focusing how we see things that we're getting ready to respond to and how we're deepening our own journey into God's heart and the care for our common home. It's a both and. So we're looking and we're focusing particularly, and I bring you to the 3 circles at the bottom of your handout, those Venns. There's diagram A for those of you who have that. 1 circle represents me, represents us, you as a candidate, and the other is the Springfield Dominican Sisters. And when you started this journey, they had come kind of close, which is why you said, I think I want to do this. But then you look at B. And as we go through this formation and the prayer that's companioning your formation, you start to see how what the sisters are about and why they are about it is beginning to overlap with who you see yourself becoming and being. And our goal or our quest in discernment is to see, do I get to a C diagram? Because if I'm going to make a commitment, I have to have more than B. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Or commitment? Veronica.
All right. So here we have the how, why, and what, right? I'm thinking about in the same way that you were looking at the tree and then at your feelings and then at, you know, how you put it together to do this journey. In my own personal journey to become an associate, I had these questions present pretty close to me for what was happening in my life. And I think that this is the time in which the why, the how, and what is really important. And I don't know if you have asked those questions, right?
How will you be different as an associate?
Mhm.
Why are you becoming an associate? What will it look like?
Exactly.
And so today's session is kind of bringing it all together, what you've had so far, and is reminding us that each of us, whether an associate or not, we're all a part of this mission of God, this in Latin, Missio Dei. And we'd like to share a little bit of, let's stop this. Okay, we'd like to share with you from a theologian. His name is Father Anthony Gittins. And we have two clips of his speaking about what it means to be a part of God's missio, which is God's cosmic activity in the world. Breathe in. Breathe in. That is a part of God's creative cosmic activity. Awesomeness. Okay, breathe in again. Yes. And so Father Anthony is speaking to his own brothers at their community meeting. And they are the fathers of the Holy Spirit, if I remember correctly. Some kind of Holy Spirit anyway. Okay, so I'm going to share. Oh, sorry about that. I tried to do it ahead of time. so
Now,
that it wouldn't
Christmas
get
is, of
commercial.
course,
But my head.
So God's breathing out would be, send forth your spirit and they shall be created and you will renew the face of the earth. This is God's continuous self-outpouring, the missio, the movement, if you like, from the center to the absolute extremes. This is God's cosmic creativity, sending forth the spirit, sending forth life. And then God's breathing in would be God's reconciling activity, God's calling people back, come back to me, my people. So it would be the covenantal relationship between God and God's people, calling people back. And then the movement then continues. God continues to breathe out and in fact breathe us out as God's people and calls us back and reconciles us and heals us and brings us and makes community of us in order to send us out again. So we get this constant idea that God is what basically keeps the entirety of creation alive, sustains it by God's mission, by the Missio Dei. And that mission of God is like God's goodness, just totally everywhere. It gives us an idea of what we might be trying to get hold of when we ourselves are starting to talk about mission. But before we can talk about ourselves and mission, we have to try and bring this great mystery of the Trinity into something a little bit more comprehensible to ourselves. And the way we do that is that we move from the idea of mission or missio Dei to the notion of evangelization. And evangelization, in essence, is simply the way Jesus himself incarnates this timeless Trinitarian mission. In other words, what happens is that in the fullness of time, Jesus brings God's eternal mission down to earth, grounds it in Palestine, grounds it in the 1st century AD, grounds it in the person of a male Jew. And this is God's mission now, not so much the eternal mystery as the historical reality. This is God's mission now among us. And what happens is that Jesus is constantly trying to explain to people how what he is doing is simply a continuation of what God has always been doing. The Father has been working until now, he says, and now I'm working. The Father and I are one. I came not to do my own will, but to do the will of the one who sent me. And so Jesus is constantly saying that he's not making this up as he goes along. He has received something from his Father. And that he has received from his Father, he is going to continue to do in fidelity to his Father. But it is the work of his Abba. It is the work of the Holy Spirit who has sent him on earth. And what Jesus...
So it's the work of the Holy Spirit who has sent Jesus on earth. And we know that Jesus's life is evangelization. Okay, so now we're going to skip a little farther.
Can you turn the volume up a little?
I thought I did,
Okay.
but I'm not, I'll try it. Yeah, I'll put
But
it
in order
higher.
to simplify it, what has happened over the last 40 years is that there has been a surprising consensus that the characteristics of evangelization, meaning the characteristics of the way Jesus does mission, can be reduced, if you like, to 4 headings. And they are proclamation and witness and dialogue and liberation. And this is what is generally spoken of as integral evangelization. In other words, Jesus does proclamation, and Jesus does witness, and Jesus does dialogue, and Jesus does liberation. And all of them are absolutely essential. It's not that Jesus does one at the expense of another. It's not that Jesus prioritizes one over the other. It's not that proclamation is more important or less important than dialogue or witness. What is important is that Jesus is going to engage and undertake to do all of these things as and when they are necessary. And as he does so in faithfulness to his Abba, he is doing integral mission. When we then, in a moment, come to think about what we have to do is what Jesus does. And as Jesus integrates mission, so we have to integrate mission. So Jesus proclaims, and Jesus witnesses, and Jesus dialogues, and Jesus liberates. And you can see this coming out very well in this chapter 2.
Jesus dialogues, Jesus proclaims, Jesus witnesses, and Jesus is about liberation. That's how the creative mission of God continues. So our mission isn't separate from God's, even though we say the Dominican sisters have a mission statement. It's a focus, it's that lens. Because we can't do it all, we're not God. Duh. Wouldn't it be better if we were? No, I'm kidding. Kidding. Time out. Okay. So one of the things that we see Jesus convicted of is his belief in what Veronica wants to talk to us is very critical to the Dominican Sisters of Springfield, the way we approach mission and ministry. And Veronica, you go ahead and get started when I get that up for you.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have the slide in front for, okay. So I think that one of the things that I can bring to our gathering today is my background as a person that grew up in Latin America, right? I grew up in Chile at a time in which we were really polarized during the Cold War. And I grew up under a military dictatorship, right? Where, you know, we persecuted people for their beliefs. We were polarized. You know, there was violence and so on. And one of the things that we had to remind ourselves over and over, and I grew up with liberation theology, which is much different to, you know, a conservative Catholic social teaching, right? Was the dignity, the human dignity of the person, which is inalienable, right? This is something that we forget about when we look at the center, when we teach from a center that is not inclusive, when we don't remember that people that live at the margins have human dignity. So this is something that in my work as an advocate, in my commitments as an associate, I put at the center of my interest, of my work, of my commitments, the human dignity of the person. So when I look at the human dignity of the person, I don't look at the people that live at the margin as poor, right? This is an example that I bring about because we tend to think of people as poor. We don't understand that living conditions of poverty, they're impoverished, but they're not poor. that is like a permanent state. People have human dignity. They may not have all the material conditions that we do, but they're rich in many ways, in their generosity, in their solidarity, in their sharing, in their hope, in their faith, right? It's the same when we think about our immigrants and refugees. When they come to different countries around the world, this is the time in our history as humans that we have the most refugees ever, right? People are moving all the time for different reasons. Well, nobody wants to leave home. You don't want to leave home, but you have to for all kinds of reasons. And once you arrive at a strange land, you're usually seeing with eyes in which you're not completely human. I don't know that you've noticed that. We have to humanize people all the time, particularly those who live at the margins. And that's what I think about human dignity, sister.
Thank you, Veronica. And it is what compels us to respond to the gospel that gives us our God incarnate, our God who becomes human. And we'd like to invite you to stand up and stretch. Stand up and stretch. Oh, you're going to get a break, but not until after you see this video. All righty. I'm going to share the screen. And this is a clip on Catholic social teaching. Oops. Can you see that?
Children bear the image of their parents both physically and psychologically and spiritually. So in all those ways, they are representative, if you want, of their parents. So in a similar way, all of us children of God represent God. We bear the likeness of God. So every human being, all have a purpose, a mission. They're part of God's plan.
At the root of our dignity is this right to life. And the right to life extends from conception to natural death. It applies to us across the whole of our existence. And so to have an ethic of life means at all times the church is concerned for how people are doing at any given moment.
When we see people trying to justify treating other people in a certain way because they're so small, they're not born yet, they're not self-aware yet, their skin is another color, they're so disabled. Whenever we see people being spoken of more like objects, then we know that the principle of the radical equality of every human person is being violated.
The human race is a family. We're all children of God. And so we should learn that lesson from individual families, that there's no one who's expendable. Everyone is worthy of reverence and protection, but especially the weakest among us.
Our dignity also cries out for the freedom and the opportunity to become everything God intended us to be. So part of life, part of fulfilling life, part of serving life, is actually creating the opportunities for everyone to have the fullness of life.
And I think Catholic social teaching urges us to operate at both the kind of individual and the global levels. Both the individual who's in immediate need, so think of the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. At the same time, we have to be attentive to the more global, the more societal violations of justice. There is systemic violence, there is systemic injustice. That has to be addressed too.
So it's not just the lawmakers, but national institutions, corporations, have this obligation to affirm the principle of the right to life and dignity, and then to decide how their institution can go about realizing it. On a personal level, it requires figuring out how you, and often this is the most effective level, at the one-on-one level, at the small group level, can make a difference. And in realizing those parts of human dignity that are in short supply, and that you have the wherewithal to do something about.
All of the church's social teaching, its understanding of family, of community life, of justice, of good governance, all of this comes back to the question, what will fulfill life for every human being as God has intended it?
That's a video produced by the Catholic Relief Services. You'd be able to Google it if you'd like to see it again. And you can Google Catholic Relief Services Human Dignity video. All right. I think it's time for a break.
Yeah. What do we do? A 5-minute stretch break? Drink your water.
They've been sitting for an hour. Y'all
Okay.
ready for a longer break? 10 minutes?
All right, that's good.
Bye. You can turn your video off and your mic, but don't say leave the meeting. I mean, we're asking you not to leave the meeting. Have a good break, Sister Joan. Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted. I forgot. I can't hear you.
Yes, I went to get some coffee because it is freezing in my office. No heat.
Oh, Sister Beth said that too, and I wouldn't notice because I keep mine pretty down.
The heat is down because of the power problem with the
Oh,
storm the other night. So
oh,
I came into my office and it was like 63 and
aye.
it's not changing. And they said it's not working. So I have a blanket over my legs.
Oh my God.
So did you lose power then?
Yes, we did.
Oh,
We
Yes,
lost we lost power for about maybe 5 seconds, luckily, and then it came back on. So
ours went off and on, but we lost it all through the house. Like one room would have no lights and the next room would be okay. Bathroom areas were dark. And so it was quite a while getting things back on.
yeah.
we got some Christmas lights that are battery operated. So as soon as it flicked off, we turned those on. And so
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You created some environment for yourself.
yeah,
Well, that too.
Well, how are our travelers? Is it okay, great.
Hope you had a good visit, Keith and Lucinda.
We did. Thank you
Good.
for this accommodation, though we didn't know it would be everyone on Zoom when we had this conflict come up, so it worked out.
It did work out.
As we go into this next part of our session, we want to invite you to please ask questions. And I know it's hard to do on Zoom, but we will invite that as we go forward. We will stop and ask about that. But also you can put your thoughts or your comments or your questions in the chat if that helps. And of course, you will have oh, the other thing I wanted to say is your handout has the link for the video clip that we used for Catholic social teaching. It's on page 4. Okay, in that box that says rights and responsibilities. Okay, and at the bottom, I know not everybody's back yet, but at the bottom of that red box, there's also a little it's called the human movie. Raise your hand if you are aware of that. Okay, it is really helpful for names and faces of persons throughout the world, and names and faces and their story. It's a 3-hour movie. I don't think you want to sit and watch the whole thing, but the really cool thing is that it has individual video vignettes of the movie, and it was put together by a man who really did have the question, what is it that we all have in common as human persons? And it really helps us with our understanding of human dignity. So I invite you to check that out on the web. And my favorite is Ada, and she is in Mumbai, I think. But anyway, you'll all have favorites, and there are a lot to choose from. So I know we're still without a couple, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. So speaking of questions, do you have any wonderings, ponderings, questions? Listening to what we shared with Father Anthony and the idea of human dignity, Veronica sharing as to her why of being here. Okay. Well, we've talked about the whole idea of mission and how our God continues that mission in and through us. And we'd like to, and you can see this on page 3 of your handout, but we'd like to speak to how that Missio Dei, that ongoing creative activity of God for love, rather than God as a person, maybe God love its own self, and how we can participate in that. Some values that will help us in our day-to-day being and activity. So Veronica, I hand it on to you.
Okay, so I think that, and give me a little bit of background here, Sister Elyse, but one of the most crucial changes and choices that make people like me want to be an associate is the understanding of the congregation stance on anti-racism, right? So we do talk about Dominican Sisters Committed to Anti-Racism work. And so how does that, the congregation, sister, if you can give us a little bit of background so we can jump into the transformational values, how does that choice happen? And what do we learn together so we can talk about those transformational
Well, the
values?
choice happens by being rooted in the gospel.
Mhm.
And how many of you grow plants in your home or transplant trees on, landscape, okay. And you know, as things grow, their roots grow, right? And it gets deeper, correct? It gets deeper. And so we've been around for a long time. I forget, 150 years, but a long time, the Dominican Sisters of Springfield. And so in that becoming, because we're never finished, we're part of this expansive Christ. We're walking into this expansive Christ. Our roots are deepening in that heart of the gospel, into that Christ. And so consequently, 16, 17 years ago, as that was happening, and the root of what we know is getting deeper, we knew we had to face the systemic nature of racism and how it is in who we are and how we minister, how we live, how we purchase, etc., etc. We didn't know what it was going to look like. But the tree doesn't know what that new branch is going to look like either, does it? But the tree knows, well, making you understand. The tree is exchanging this life-giving oxygen with the world. That's what we want to do. We want to exchange this Missio Dei with the world. And so in a chapter decision that, if I recall, was unanimous, sisters, right? We chose to be on this journey to look at ourselves and our systems in our lives and the ones we participate in without knowing exactly what it would be like. But we did know it was the heart of God. We did know it was what our Christ teaches us. And that's when, in this work, we became aware of these 4 values that Veronica is going to speak of. And then I'm going to help you see them in a gospel light.
Yes. So I want to tell you that this is really important to all institutions, but also individually when you start working from a place of inclusion and equity. Okay. If you are working on justice, you are working on anti-racism work, whether you have been aware or not. And there are 4 very basic and important transformational values that accompanies in this work. Okay, so we're going to start with both and. So both and is a call for tolerance, for inclusion, and for compassion. So it's opposing, right? That it is challenging the idea of but, or one or the other, either or, and all the binaries that we tend to use and focus on that really pushes to think in absolutes, which are not necessarily the best way of thinking, right? So when we have both an and come outside the boundary, we really challenge this idea of the black and white, right? We really challenge this idea of a one way of being or the other option, right, within the binary is wrong. So the both and that give us the idea, the right to exist as how we are. That is the both and that. The right to include those that we have continuously left at the margin because we didn't think they belong within the either or, we left them out. Well, they do belong. They're within the inclusion of the both and. Okay.
In our chapter prayer, we
Yeah.
have the line, Christ, you are expansive. We journey in that truth. And so in our gospel mind, we realize that both and value is God's own self as incarnate. The incarnation is the both and value in the gospel, 100% human and 100% divine. Excuse me, that's bad math, right? So it is a faith place that we stand, right, that God values the both and.
Right. And so as we cover these ones, just keep in mind, this is not just theory, it's not just value, it's a praxis, right? It's something that you practice. When you think of both and, you are rejecting either or. When you think about transparency, you're thinking about transparent communication, you are opposing secrecy, okay? What's the problem with secrecy? Who benefits from secrecy, right? When you challenge secrecy and secret communication, you're challenging the lack of access. When one group of people only holds knowledge and keep it secret, you're only benefiting that group of people. So you get what I'm saying. Transparent communication implies that you're opening your institution, you're opening your work, your praxis, and you communicate with people transparently so people are able to make decisions justly, right? It's almost like the right to self-determination. You can only make decisions when you have access to information, to communication.
And again, that's what the scriptures are for us. They are transparent communication, God's transparent communication. And it's not like a memo where you read it and it's done, but it is dabar, the Hebrew word for word. And that word means living. It's alive. So the Gospels, the scriptures themselves are an alive, transparent communication of God calling us to participate and not holding anything back.
Yes. Let's talk about collaboration. This is one of my favorites because this is very rooted in me as a Latin American, as a Chilean woman, as a person that grew hearing, reading, and learning from liberation theology. This collaboration is the base for solidarity, right? Understanding that we are not one person that is going to get to the end line by themselves, right? It's not about competition. That's what you challenge here. It's not about competing for getting there, the love of God even, right? The price, the resources. This is about collaborating. This is about how we grow together, how we benefit each other. How do you achieve things instead of competing with one another? How do you build community? The only way to do that is by collaborating. And when you collaborate, you sort of even the field and think about equity. Who is sitting at my table when I collaborate? right?
Amen. And we have the Trinity, right? We have the Trinity, the absolute perfect example of collaboration and belonging. And we understand that there are three distinct persons in the one God. Listen to that. And there's not competition. I was supposed to do that. What'd you do, Spirit? That was mine. You know, I mean, seriously. Or the son saying, isn't it my turn? You've done that enough, Dad. No, there's none of that. We wouldn't even put that on the concept of Trinity. I mean, I don't mean to minimize, but the point here is when we go deeper in the rootedness of faith, we can walk into the expansiveness of Christ.
One of the things that I remember saying the last time we did this is that when you collaborate, as opposed of competing, you start seeing the human dignity of people. When you're competing against something. You're not looking anymore. You just need to get to the goal, whatever that is. But when you're collaborating and you're sitting at this inclusive table, you're looking at people in their dignity and you're thinking, we're working together for benefit the community, right? And so that's when God appears everywhere at that table. Let's talk about abundance. Abundance is opposing this fallacy of the scarcity, that our lives are completely affected by the issue of scarcity of resources, scarcity of ideas, scarcity of change, you know, particularly this idea of pie, the pie in which, you know, you have this little slice and that's all you can get because, you know, the resources have been hoarded, right? The idea of abundance is, this is our reality. If you look at who holds whatever resources, wealth, you're also looking at why is it being held in that way. You're challenging the methods of scarcity. We believe in abundance. We believe that we're going to be provided, we're going to work for it, we're going to collaborate, and we will have access to the abundance that God gives us. We just need to find a way to challenge this idea of scarcity, that few people have access to salvation, to a good way of living, to survival.
And that abundance, oh, Veronica, I mean, it's like the evangelists writing those gospels couldn't say it enough. You know, friends, there is only one miracle, uno, in all four gospels, and it shows up in one of those gospels twice. You think we're trying to, you think the life of Christ is trying to tell us something? And that miracle, the loaves and the fishes.
Right.
So whatever I have is more than enough. Whatever we have is more than enough. And the first thing Jesus does when he, you know, there's a child in one of the stories that says, well, I've got this, right? Even the reminder of dignity of the child could offer something.
Right.
So the first thing Jesus does in every single one of those stories, gives thanks. Thanks for this. Not, oh man, this is never going to make it. But thanks. Thank you. And then in collaboration, let's share it. So those gospel values that we can see using and participating in these values, and you can write them on your page 4. So you'll write the gospel ones if you'd like. We're suggesting that for both and thinking, that would be the incarnation, Jesus Christ. 100% human, 100% divine. Transparency, the scriptures themselves. God communicating again and again and again, and not having it be a secret. And that collaboration, for us, that's the Trinity. That's that truth that we are a part of that God self in complete communion as three. And that we were reminded that if there's something that Jesus is trying to tell us, it's that what we have is enough, and it's more than enough. It's exponentially more. So here we are. Here you are. Gift. You created in the image and likeness of God. Gift to the world. I mean, think of that. There you are. You're that package, by the way. You're okay. And you're open right now, right? That's your living. So you're this gift. And this gift of yourself that you know, with all of your gifts and talents and limitations and immaturities, all of this marvelous wrapped gift is God's. And we can't help but want to give it back, right? We want to give what we can. And today, you're asking the question, why, as a Dominican associate? Why? It doesn't mean you haven't been doing this, but we're using this lens of the Dominican Sisters of Springfield in the Dominican charism. Why? Our why? To proclaim good news to the poor, freedom to prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, set the oppressed free, and to proclaim a year of the Lord's favor. That is Luke chapter 4, that is Isaiah. And you will recall that this is the passage of all the passages that Jesus could have opened and read the first time he's doing anything publicly. This is it. And do you see what Father Gittins spoke of with proclamation and liberation? Do you see that? Witness? You see it right here? Is that just exciting? Right? Just exciting. Veronica. So this is the gift.
All right. So I think that you need to look at your handout. Is it in your handout? Yes, it is.
Page 3.
So these things intersect, right? What you love, what the world needs, and what you're good at. And in the intersection, right, you have the why, which is your reflection, your thoughtful understanding of who you are, and then why you want to become an associate. This was part of my exercise as well. You know, why do I want to do this? That is really important for your discernment. Why is from the intersection of these three. Think of that.
If the heart of our intersection is really that divine presence within us, you see the Kiro cross in the middle, that intersection of what the world needs, what I'm good at, and what I love. And this is using a Japanese concept of ikigai, and you can Google it. So this is a Japanese concept of finding a why, of why we exist, and we're using it in with our Christian lens. But it really makes sense, doesn't it? And there's a fourth circle that the Japanese model uses, and it's what I can get paid for. So that if you're discerning an employment situation, you know, where does this intersection happen with what I can get paid for? But just for a moment, what do you love? Children, music, food, using your hands, gardening, sewing, figuring out analytics, math, maybe you're one of those, you know?
Teaching. Mhm.
What are you good at? And where what I love and what I'm good at intersects is my passion.
Right.
So Veronica has been telling us that she loves the fact that she can look at a person and see their dignity.
Mhm.
She's learned that through the struggles of her life. And she's good at organizing.
Mhm.
So when Veronica brings together what she's loving and what she's good at, her passion, we heard her passion, did we not? And the same with the world, what the world needs as it intersects.
Mhm.
So just silently, and because of time, we're not going to go into the small groups and do this, okay? Is that okay for you? But why you? Why now? Why this? Okay, insights, inspirations. As you hear this, you can unmute if you'd like to speak up, to share some thoughts. What's going through your mind, your heart?
I'll take the dog.
I have a teacher that asks, what are the shimmerings? What's shimmering? Or what do you need to take more time with? You can put it in the chat if you prefer not to say it out loud.
I'll say something, Elyse. Okay. Is that okay if I say something? Okay. I was looking at the chart, the last one that you just put up, the circles, the intersections, you know. And I was thinking it's not just at a time like right now, the associates might use this because they're thinking about becoming an associate, but it could be used at any time in our lives. It could be used right now for me, you know. I've been a Dominican for over 60 years, but I could still use those three circles. What do I love? What am I good at? And what does the world need now that I could contribute to? So that just was spinning in my mind as I listened.
Thank you very much.
I just feel this was the next.
Anyone else?
And I was praying and asking for something to help guide me to the spiritual path of wanting to, that I was wanting to be on. And I was kind of lost and trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer so many things, even though I'm still learning, it's it's been an answer to the direction I want to put my life in.
Thank you, Cindy. Yes, we can, and doesn't Christ show us that in Christ's own life? That yes, he continues to become. That's why one of the reasons I love the Syrophoenician woman story, that he's learning and becoming. From Debbie and Pete, I'd be interested to hear more about what the Dominican sisters are doing in terms of anti-racism work. Okay, well, I think you're going to get a whole session on that, but I will simply share that one thing that we are doing is challenging ourselves when we do construction. Okay, so when we were building St. Rose, to go to the contractor and ask how that contractor uses persons of color, businesses that are owned by persons of color. Okay, and interestingly enough, the contractor learned something from that. And that contractor to this day continues to use a template of that kind of questioning for themselves as they do work. So systemically, my brother's in construction. So, Paul will call his friend Pete because Pete's so good at plumbing, and Pete will say, oh, so-and-so does roofing. Well, you see how that just keeps it like this? So when we ask the question of our contractor, that's one way. Okay, there's lots more ways, and Bob and Marceline, I think we're going to tell you about that. Is that right, Sister Joan?
Yes, in the next session that.
The next session.
Next
We are
month,
setting
it
them
would
up
be
good,
part of-
aren't we?
Yes, you are.
But
Elyse.
I'm gonna summarize something. I had a question. I didn't know if they had just had the session with Sister Marceline or they were going to, but so 3 things to think about anti-racism work that it's gonna help you with any other justice work you choose to do, right? Immigrant advocacy and so on, persons with disabilities. There's 3 things that the sisters over the years have worked on, and they're simultaneously being worked on at all times because they belong together in this work, okay? 1, on anti-racism, you have a little sphere in which you, as a person, look at your bias. You question your own bias towards X, Y, and Z. Persons of colors, immigrants, and so on, right? You look at the issue of prejudice and bias at the individual level. The second sphere is the issue of just relations. How do I create just relations within the community? How do I get to know my neighbor? How do I get to know the people that go to church with me that don't look like me, don't speak language like me, and so on? The creation of just relations. And the third circle, and they all intersect, is institutionalized racism. The goal for equity at the institutional level. And this is a work that the Dominican sisters started to do, 15 years ago?
Yes.
And we're still doing. Yes.
Thank
So
you.
that's
for the
something for the
question.
background, yes.
Yeah. And we're going to go on unless there's, yes, Sister Bernice.
Yes, I think I got a little lost here in exactly the initial question. And I think we're basically looking today at how does one know that God is inviting, if I'm a candidate, how do I know that God is inviting me to be an associate? And so if I become an associate, how is my life different? And I remember, Veronica, you talked about a difference that makes no difference is no difference at all. And I think that's what we're asking our candidates to do at this point, is to look at what they already do and using this lens as a Springfield Dominican associate, how does that make a difference in anything I do, how I live my life and how I minister with others or how I be with others? So I think that's the overall issue for today.
Well, it's for every formation session. That is the question of every formation session.
Okay.
It's the discernment question, and that's what our candidates, our associate candidates are listening to their heart. They're speaking with God. Show us, help us know this. And it doesn't mean I'm going to have it all put together, but there's a rightness that and you know why? Because there is a place where that needs to be. It might be another charism, but I hope not. No, I'm kidding. But we need you. We need persons who are hungry to make a difference with the gospel of Jesus Christ, because you help us stay centered. And looking at the time, we're just going to go right ahead here, if that's okay. And Veronica, I'm going to go really fast. Here's your mission statement.
Okay. So we're going to read this together. Springfield Dominican Associates are called to embody the Dominican charism, hear and proclaim God's word, and promote the dignity of all persons. We commit ourselves to live rooted in prayer, study, community, and ministry. Through our diverse gifts, we strive to participate in the mission of the church by putting into action our call to preach the word with our lives.
This is the Springfield Dominican Associate mission statement. So that's what this session has been about. To be able to hold this mission statement yourselves. And that will be a process. I know mine is, and I've been living this life for a while. So here we are as Dominican Sisters of Springfield. Here's our logo, and here's your logo, or will be your logo, of the Dominican Associates of Springfield. And we are rooted in the gospel. And don't you love these trees?
Yeah.
Full of color and life.
Beautiful.
Rooted. Go ahead. Oh. And as we live this way and do this together, we ask the question, how? And the cool thing is that we know the emphasis for us in our ministry is empowering human dignity. And Veronica, I think you addressed this earlier. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that part of what we don't usually say about the intersection of what we love, what the world needs, and how I can do it, right? Is that you can do this at all levels. It doesn't have to be an extraordinary thing that is going to take all your time and you're going to be tired all the time. You're not going to do self-care. No, your commitment is one that has significance and is crucial to you. And it's part of what the world needs. It may be something really simple that you have not thought about, but really important.
And something you're already doing.
Exactly.
Something you're already involved in, and you're bringing another awareness to what you're doing. You know, it's almost like you're starting over because of that awareness and that deep knowing that you have. There are 4 ways that Jesus shows us how. These are 4 of signs, according to Father Anthony Gittins again, that we know we're discipling.
Right.
There's encounter. table fellowship. That's on your handout. I think it's on the last page. Foot washing and boundary breaking. This is how we minister and live as disciples. Encounter, table fellowship, foot washing, boundary breaking. So again, where's that intersection? And Veronica and I wanted to remind us that it's all for the life of the world. You know, the trees, we use the trees on purpose because they exchange oxygen with everyone. We all need, we share it, right? And so see if you recognize anybody in this picture. This is large enough for you. So there she is. Now, Veronica, how did you end up on SDART? And what is SDART?
Okay, so the Springfield Dominican Anti-Racism Team. So how I end up, and this is the cool story, I'm gonna try to summarize. I was fighting Homeland Security to get my citizenship. I applied for my citizenship. The government said, no, we need to review it. I spent about 3 years in limbo. I was scared. I had left my home country. This was my country. And I had to, you know, start a legal battle, right? And I was teaching at the university. I was working some things with the Dominican sisters. And my spiritual director at that time, Sister Anita, journeyed with me for several years. She kept me alive. And one day she said, Veronica, would you like to become an associate? This is what we do. And I fell in love with the idea. I was already doing certain things, particularly immigrant advocacy at the time. And I combined that journey, that pain, that fear that later on became strength and commitment into my 3 Dominican associate commitments. Out of all this journey with Dominican sisters, with living at the margins, with trying to do something for the community, right? And that's how I got invited to SDART.
There are many ways of being in ministry with us and with the lens of the congregation and the charism. You know, we have Jubilee Farm. Some of our associates are on the board. Some of our associates are volunteers there. This is a picture of Sister Jane Ann and one of the staff members at the literacy centers. There are literacy centers, or maybe it's not our literacy center that we sponsor, but it's a way that you say, you know, that's where I intersect. I want to help someone learn to read. I know we have ABE classes right here in Springfield. Fishes and, not we Springfield Dominican, but the Fishes and Loaves, they do it actually. Helping Hands. There are a lot of places right here in town. And this was a group that was at Jubilee Farm, I believe. So friends, we apologize for this last part going so quickly and not giving you another time together in your groups.
Yeah.
But we're giving Sister Joan her 5 minutes. And just want to repeat, Veronica, will you do this with me?
Yep.
A difference.
A difference that makes
no
difference
is
no difference at all.
At all.
Thank you, Veronica and Sister Elyse Marie, for modeling the passion of your own Dominican mission and ministry. And one of the values of your presentation today is that you did it together, which is what the associate program is all about, because each of us brings our own truth. And by sharing that truth, we're stronger and our message goes farther because we're doing it together. So blessings on both of you. And thanks for helping us look at the transformational values and our Dominican lens for the life of the world. Thank you. Veronica and Elyse Marie spoke about discernment. And so eventually, as we go along in these presentations, we'll be asking you to prepare a commitment statement of your own. And how will you make a difference in the lives of others? You're already living out your faith and God's mission in your own ways. And so it's not always something new, but it might be different as a Dominican associate. There might be something from all of these things that you're learning that you can bring into your everyday life. And we hope so by the time we're finished with our journey. With today's attachments, you received an article by Joan Chittister, which is entitled Let the Call Be Heard. And I would ask that you use this article for reflection on the associate program. The article speaks of the truth and wisdom that each of us brings to the Dominican charism and to the partnership that we will share as associates and sisters. So when reading it, please substitute Dominican for Benedictine, as it was really written for Benedictines, and associates for oblates, as they call their associates oblates. I'd ask you to use this article with your sponsor sometime before our January meeting. And the message really is that what we cannot do alone, we are stronger in doing it together as associates and sisters, as we companion and journey together. We all bring different gifts to this walk. Each Sunday during Advent, you've received information about the Midwest Dominican Associate Directors sponsoring an Advent prayer and reflection time at 6 o'clock. There's 2 more left, one tonight and one next week. So you're invited to join in this reflection. Many of these things I'm sending you are optional. They're not requirements, but they might help some in your own faith life. The link is the same each week, and the reflections are meant to be time for prayer. So there's no discussion groups to this evening. Please keep watching for the reflection materials that come each week during Advent from Sister Marceline on the 2021 Dominican Month for Peace. And this year, the focus is on our sisters and brothers in Venezuela. Once again, I thank our speakers and all of the time and preparation that you give to this. I thank Sister Beth for her tech support, Sister Beth Murphy, and Associate Kathy Becker, who also joined us today, another partnership. I was wrong a while ago. Our next meeting is Sunday, January 9th, and the speaker is Sister Marceline, who will be presenting on Catholic social teachings. And it's February that we will have 3 presentations, and one of those presentations in February will be on anti-racism. So blessings, my friends, on the remaining days of your Advent journey. And as our prayer for the life of the world says, free our hearts to recognize and attend to Christ in hidden and unexpected places. So may we recognize Jesus Emmanuel in all that we come into contact with this Christmas. And may your celebration of Christmas with your families and friends be filled with light and love and joy and God's peace. So a blessed Christmas to all of you and those you love. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
God
you
bless.
very much. Good to be with
Thank
you
you.
all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, guys, gals.